Hi everyone, it's Sunday night, October 14th, time for another HideNet Week in Review. I'm Vice President Vera Dordic. From Italy this week, European editor Andrea Guolo reports that cows throughout the EU have stabilized. However, that is tempered by the limited sales volume that they had. And this week, Italy's water purification issues, particularly in the Arzignano area, have taken center stage again, with the situation causing production limits. This will affect certain sectors more than others, and Andrea lays out some scenarios that may be likely due to this recurring issue. Andrea also tells us what's happening with the sheepskin market this week and what the likelihood of changes in those selections, and of course why that is. In his report, he also notes that the price of Brazilian TR1 in Europe has stabilized with good quality TR1 in Italy selling at the level of 65 to 68 cents per square foot. And speaking of Brazilian TR1, Latin American editor Ronald Guiel says that indeed that is the price level for TR1 at 65 to 70 cents, but also negotiations are always possible. This week, we also hear from Brazil that the country's September leather exports were down about 22% in value. And then while the country's level of year-to-date exports in total exceeded imports in many categories, the same could not be said about hides and skins. We also have an interesting report about a new program started in Brazil to sell footwear products to China through e-commerce from the factory directly to the Chinese final consumer. This week, we also have news on Argentine, Chilean, and Colombian slaughter numbers and a story on the seizure of thousands of counterfeit shoes in Guanajuato, among other items. Turning to the United States, prices were mixed this week as sellers worked to keep trading levels generally steady. They pretty much turned down bids that came in below steady money. Most said they had a really good week of sales. Cows saw more interest this week with the return of Asian buyers after the autumn holidays. So taking a look at heavy Texas steers, prices throughout the period managed to stay steady and actually make some gains at week's end. This is perhaps not surprising because a lot of producers are well sold on this selection along with a number of others. Turning to the export report, again this week, that report was the topic of discussion because the total net sales for this week in wet blue were actually negative, and quite so. This was the result of a rather large correction of about 147,500 pieces that were deducted from last week's report of sales to the Dominican Republic. The USDA says it was a reporting error. So last week's amazingly high wet blue sales figures averaged with this week's stunningly low number result in a figure that's more of a normal level for each week. Even still, the sales numbers this week were rather low. But again, it was the week of Asian autumn holidays, so that could explain some of that. With that, that's all we have for this week. And so until next Sunday, good night from HideNet.